afternoon, everybody. We continue with our month-long series celebrating Black History Month. Joining us today is Mr. Paul Stewart, who has a wonderful story about the early days in St. Pete. Tell us, Mr. Stewart, about your grandmother and your aunt. You said that they did something special for the baseball players who would come into town.
Yes, during those years, I'm talking about when I was in middle school, the black ball players, when they had spring training here, well, they couldn't stay in the hotels with the white ball players, so they had to find lodging for them in the black community. Well, my grandmother kept all that she could keep in our house, and a lot of them stayed around the corner in our cousin's house on 15th Avenue. We lived on 18th Street, right off of 18th Avenue.
Wow.
But my grandmother fed everybody in the afternoon. They all came there for dinner. And I can remember the days when I'd come home from school, and at one time we had Frank Robinson's new El Dorado that he had just won for most valuable player in one driveway, and a player for the Cardinals named Ellis Burden. He had the first Corvette that I'd ever seen a black man have, but his Corvette was in the other driveway. Well, when I came home from school, wow, I washed their cars, but I would have my buddies come, and I'd charge them a nickel to help me. And I would tell Frank, Frank, you don't have to pay me. Just let us sit in the car when we finish washing it. Because he'd give us $1 anyway.
That was a treat.
But we would sit in the car and just sit there and smell the new leather.
Oh my gosh.
It was a treat. I mean, it was just so beautiful.
Looking back, who was the most exciting baseball player that you all met?
The most exciting that I remember was Roberto Clemente. When the Pirates would come up from Sarasota for their 4 days of playing the Cardinals, well, we had all of the black Pirate ball players in the house as well. The family slept in like rollaway beds in the hallways, but I maintained my room. I had twin beds, and Roberto was my roommate. And he would come in at night, and he would try to explain to me situations that he had encountered during the day. And he spoke very little English then. So we would stay up late, me trying to explain to him what he should have said, or how to say this or say that, so that he could learn a little more English. But I fondly remember those days.
Do you find it frustrating when you talk to young folks about segregation and having baseball players stay in your house because they couldn't stay in a hotel simply because of the color of their skin? Do the young folks really get it?
Not really. But I try to tell them like this. Can you imagine making more money than anybody else you know, and you can't even sit in a restaurant and have a meal or stay in a hotel despite all the money you have? That was the situation for them. Well,
thank you for sharing your story with the St. Pete African American Heritage Project. No doubt a lot of young folks will be mesmerized by your story about the baseball players. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for more on our segment celebrating Black History Month, come on back on Facebook.